ago, a bunch of people got together on the premise that we could start businesses in the Adirondacks that might actually make sense, and that we could actually potentially create a fund, an entrepreneurial fund, to get them kick-started. And we created something called Adirondack Business Creators, or ABC for short. The plan was that to get some entrepreneurial stimulus that would help create jobs, such as Andrew's described, let families live and prosper in the Adirondacks, with byproduct wealth creation, which create other jobs as these people invested in new homes or in expanding their businesses, and to keep our schools working, because as we depopulate the Adirondacks, and in the last 2 censuses we've gotten 2 years older in 10 years, and that's mainly because we've had retirees come back to the Adirondacks, but kids leave because there aren't any jobs. Well, the byproduct of that is if you don't have schools, you don't have firemen. If you don't have firemen, you don't have a village. And if you don't have a village, then the hamlets go away and the villages get bigger, which is exactly what's been happening. Saranac Lake has been getting bigger, and a lot of the little hamlets have been getting smaller. So the Community Foundation Act acted as the incubator, and we passed the hat. We raised $100,000 of charitable giving to underwrite this, and we hired some consultants from Clarkson and a couple of grad students to do a 6-month study on the premise that if we started with some ideas, would they work in the Adirondacks? And our goal was to figure out if we could do a fund that would do well, not necessarily do good. It would do well financially, and the byproduct of doing well financially, as I said earlier, would be wealth creation, which would do good in the communities because the people with money in their pockets would spend it to revitalize their own communities. Whereas every fund that's been tried that does good as a premise has to be publicly funded or funded through someone who is not looking to make a return like the people on Wall Street are. We wanted a Wall Street-like return. So the steering committee that we formed, some of the people you've already met, a terrific group of people, me, Mark, who you've seen, Kim Elliman, who's the president or chair of the Open Space Institute, John Ernst, who runs the Elkway Lodge and owns huge tracts of land down in that area, Adele Connors, who you all, I think, know, who has been an entrepreneur herself in the Adirondacks, David Heidecorn, who is treasurer for the ACT and has been involved in a lot of other organizations. And so I won't go through the whole list. It's just to say it's a very impressive group of people. We work pretty hard. The advisory group, however, I'll leave this up for a second, is really a who's who's list of people in the Adirondacks, many of whom are in this room. And for that, I thank you very much, because we've had a lot of good input. We attempted to bring together people from academia, banking, finance, and all walks, agriculture, and see if we could come up with some ideas that looked like they might be fundable and that would have a native Adirondack character to them. The initial set of business opportunities that were addressed were in these sectors: renewable energy, tourism, food distribution and production, light manufacturing with some intellectual property control, and beverages, both alcoholic and non-alcoholic. And the idea was that all could be leveraged with the Adirondacks as a brand. We engaged with Clarkson's incubator and also had worked with the people in Vermont, where there's a fund, similar fund called Fresh Tracks, which gave us a lot of good insight and advice. We ended up with some challenges. That where do we find the entrepreneurs to run business plans? For example, if somebody said, as they did, we really need lodging here in Blue Mountain Lake, where would you find somebody who wanted to actually run a hotel or a motel? Where do we get entrepreneurs with ideas that would work here versus somewhere else? And how do we stay focused on the competitive advantages of the Adirondacks? Creating businesses is a new approach. That's one of the things we looked at. Not just finding an entrepreneur, who's comes in with a business plan, but finding ideas that made sense, because a lot of that group that you saw had great ideas for what could go on in the Adirondacks, whether it be anything from, let's make Adirondack branded vodka. We've got lots of potatoes and lots of clean water, to let's make a tourist business where we could do what you do in Africa, where you go from tent city to tent city and have experiences like go rafting on the Hudson. So that was a new approach. And betting on young companies, which is what the traditional venture capitalist does, which I do, that's my day job, is many losses with very occasional wins. It's a high-risk proposition. And if you roll the dice 10 times and it always comes up snake eyes, it happens, even though you might be really good. So we didn't want that kind of a risk. What we thought were the success factors we could bring to the table were project financing, mentoring from that group that you saw before, and maybe an expanded group, and anybody here who wasn't on that list and would be interested, we'd be interested in adding you. Scalable businesses with commercial level returns, and the unleveraged assets that we have in the Adirondacks, the environment, tourism, biomass capability, you know, we've got all that wood that's no longer going necessarily into paper production, good water, and food and agriculture. We wanted to align with the state's economic development efforts. So that's where we were. It looked like we were in a good space. The economy's improving. We have thanks to Mark, we've got broadband that we can leverage. And park-wide planning and partnerships, thanks to Jim and Dave, who have set a goal and a structure for what the future of the Adirondacks might look like. So where are we? I wish I could tell you that we were done, but we've actually just finished the first year. The study is over. It came up with as many questions as answers. We had 6 opportunities that were presented, and that larger panel looked at them and said, I like that one, and I like that one. I don't like the other 4. And the 2 they liked were not necessarily the same person to person. It wasn't enough so that you could say, we really have the critical mass to start a private equity fund. So where we are is we're looking at other alternatives. One of them that we're looking at seriously is exploring an angel or dedicated fund. The way this works is we would create a center where businesses could be examined, opportunities could be examined, and then individual businesses could be funded by angel investors, a group of people who would say, I like that, I would like to put $100,000 into that. I'd like to put $10,000 into it, whatever. And we're examining that now. We think we have to do that with a partner. We probably need a center and a coordinator, but if we did that, we could then at least open the doors to entrepreneurs and business opportunities to come and present. And many of you have seen the programs on television where, you know, you give your idea. We'll make a recommendation soon. We're right in the middle of this. It's been a very interesting process, and anybody that was here who's participated, I thank you. And to close, I'd like to say anybody who wasn't involved, who thinks that the idea of having some way that entrepreneurial businesses can be attracted in the Adirondacks and wants to join, please give either Jim or Dave or me or anybody on that panel a call. That's it. Thanks.